The winery was established about 21 years ago. The original owners of the winery established it here because some of those people were traditional migrants that moved into this region. Others were winemakers that came and grew to love this region for the styles of wines it produces. The region itself is a cool climate growing wine region. That is, it has very cool growing season, which allows for a long ripening and development phase to produce very fine and elegant wines. It's very different to other regions where that can be quite heavy and quite robust. These produces more elegant, more European styles of wines from this region. Now, Cabernet and Merlot grows really well out of this region. Merlot is harvested reasonably early and ripens quite early, and which is good for this region because it being a cool climate, you can get some issues, but being Merlot that ripens early, you get very good flavours. And Cabernet is a much thicker skinned variety, and it tends to resist the cooler climate quite well and has a long maturity period, which sort of fits very nicely with these cool climates. So it produces a lovely wine. We get really nice soft intensity from the Merlot and real spicy richness and good tannin development in the Cabernet. The vineyard here at Gapsed Wines was planted about 15 to 18 years ago. We have a number of varieties across this vineyard. Generally the season starts about now. We are obviously in early October at the moment. Normally we have shoot burst, or the buds begin to burst around about late September, about the third week of September. And if you can see the vines today, there's little shoots around about 5 or 10 centimetres long on the vines. This is a very critical time of the year because if we get a cool morning, you can get some damage. So obviously want to make sure we have warm mornings so we don't get any frost damage. And then from here, the vines grow and they'll go into flowering in a couple of weeks, and then they'll sort of get very big canopies. And then we'll have fruit ripening sort of late January, early February, with harvesting occurring the start of March through to the middle of April. Then after harvest, the vineyard or the vines go into a phase of where they start to accumulate sugars, and then they will go into senescence, which is leaf fall, and they fall leaves around about May, early May, start to drop their leaves. And then in the middle of the year, around about June, July, we begin to prune the vines and then begin the cycle again.
Can you tell us about what grape do you plant here and how do
Yeah, look, there's a number of varieties we've got planted here at Gapsed Wines. This is a cool climate wine growing region. White grape varieties do really well in this region. Chardonnay, Pinot Grigio and Riesling do really well in this climate, but also some of the red varieties also do very well. Cabernet and Merlot, due to the long, cool ripening season, produce very intense flavoured wines.
Okay, great. So in the end, can you introduce a little bit about the wine we talked about yesterday?
Sure. The Airbag 2017 Cabernet Merlot, which we packaged yesterday, is a blend of Cabernet and Merlot. We've got the lovely spicy, berry-rich Cabernet from this region, blended with the soft and fruit-filling Merlot, which also comes from this region. Cabernet has a long ripening season, whereas Merlot is picked quite early. And the blend of those two varieties has produced quite a spicy, berry-rich wine.
Okay. Another question is, can you tell us about the climate here and why you making wines use
Sure.
these two grape species, Cabernet and Merlot?
Yeah, sure. This region is a cool climate growing region. It produces wines with more elegance. So we don't have the big, heavy, rich wines that you see from other regions in Australia. It's more European style. The wines with Merlot and Cabernet, we have a long ripening season, so lots of time to develop the flavours and the tannins and the colours, which produce the wines with the elegance that we see from this region. So, behind us here at Gapsed Wines, we have our vineyard, which has been planted for about 15 to 18 years. We have a number of varieties planted here at Gapsed Wines and across the King Valley and Alpine region. The growing process begins with bud bursts around about late September to early October, which is right about now. And if you looked at the vineyard today, there's little shoots around about 1 to 2 centimetres long, up to about 10 centimetres long on the vines. This year is a very dangerous period of the growing season, because if we have a cool, very cold night, we could get some frost, being a cool climate region. But I think we're pretty safe this year so far, which is fantastic. From here, the vines will begin to grow and spread their tendrils and their leaves and so forth. We'll have flowering, and then we'll have fruit development sort of late December to early January. The fruit begins to ripen late January, early February, for harvest to occur early March to mid-April. After harvest, the vines go into a phase where they start to accumulate sugars, and then they go into what we call senescence, or to leaf fall, about early May. And then the leaves fall off, and about the middle of the year, June, July, we go through and we prune the vines.
So can you tell us a little bit about the grape you plant here and how good they are?
Sorry, say again?
The grape species you plant.
Oh, okay, yep. So the King and Alpine Valleys is a cool climate wine growing region. It is fantastic for growing white wines. Varieties like Chardonnay, Pinot Grigio and Riesling grow very well in this climate, but also some red varieties also grow very well. Cabernet and Merlot are very well suited for this region, being a cool climate, long ripening season. Here we are in the middle of Gapstead Winery. We're in the grape receival area. This is the area where the grapes come in on the trucks. In this area we have a number of bits of technology laid around. We'll just point a few things out. Right behind us here, these are what we call Rotary Fermenters, and that's where we pump the red grapes when they're being crushed. They get crushed over here, and they get put up into these fermenters for around about 10 days and fermented. All right, and then they get pressed they get drained and pressed. We have right here, we have static fermenters. They're a different type of fermenter, and an important thing about winemaking is having different types of technologies available to make different styles of wine. So we've got rotary fermenters, we've got static fermenters. Just here, this machine right here is what we call a rotary drum vacuum filter, and it's for filtering out heavy lees and solids, which is part of the winemaking process. So just behind here we have our grape receival hopper. This is where the grapes come in on trucks, and then they're weighed over here and then tipped into that hopper up there before they're crushed. The crusher's not there at the moment because this is not the vintage season, and the crusher gets pulled out and maintained, so it's all ready to go for vintage. And the grapes get crushed from here and they go up into the fermenters, which I showed you earlier. If they're a red grape or if they're white grape, we'll just scroll around here. Okay, and the white grapes will get crushed directly into the presses. So these machines right here are Airbag Presses. This is the technology has been around for a number of years, but it's very, very good and very, very current technology. It basically is a big drum with a membrane inside that squeezes the grapes gently to get the juice out of the wine. And from there, the juice is pumped away. You can't see it, but behind those presses are refrigeration coils, and the juice is cooled immediately after coming out of the press. That way we are preserving the flavours as soon as we can after the fruit's been crushed and pressed. And then from there, the juice goes into our tank farm, which is behind us here, and where we do all sorts of things. We clarify and clean up the juice, we ferment the reds, and then we ferment the wines. And that process can take anywhere from up to 4 months to 2 years or more, depending on the style of wine that we're producing here.